If you were to ask Ninjago fans what their favorite season of the show was, I think a lot of them would pick Season 4, the Tournament of Elements. The reveal that there were a ton of characters with elemental powers outside of the ninja was mind-blowing, and seeing all of the elemental masters fighting each other made for one of the best seasons in all of Ninjago. So, I thought it would be fun to rank everyone in the Tournament of Elements from weakest to strongest, which is the topic of today's video. To be clear, even though a lot of the elemental masters do appear in later seasons as well, I'm not going to be taking those feats into account because I'm specifically ranking the masters as they appear in Season 4. One more thing to note is that just because one master is ranked super high doesn't mean that they would beat everyone below them in a fight, because a lot of the elemental powers are capable of countering one another for the sole reason that they're a bad matchup. This is more so just a ranking of overall strength rather than who specifically beats who in a fight. Getting into the actual ranking, at last place we have Jacob, the Master of Sound. Jacob is blind, but this doesn't inhibit him too much because the element of sound allows him to fire off and sense sound waves in order to detect his surroundings, kind of like a more advanced version of echolocation. We also see that the sound waves Jacob creates can be quite destructive, with them being capable of completely shattering pots upon impact during his fight against Skylar. Overall, I would say that Jacob's element is pretty mediocre, and the same thing can be said for his other skills, as the only thing we see him do is use a blow dart to attack his opponent and help sense his surroundings. But what really holds Jacob back to last place is that unlike the other elemental masters, he never actually awakens a dragon. This is because the writers ran a joke about how everyone forgot about Jacob and left him behind on Chen's island, leaving him with no elemental dragon of his own. And since nothing in his arsenal even comes close to being capable of summoning a dragon on command, Jacob unfortunately can't really be placed anywhere but last. Coming ahead of Jacob is Chamille, the Master of Form. Chamille can use the element of form to change her appearance into anyone she desires, making her abilities super useful when it comes to infiltration and reconnaissance. However, in the specific context I'm talking about, which is combat, Chamille's abilities are a bit less useful unless there's a large group fight where she can take advantage of the chaos and disguise herself as one of her opponent's allies. After all, in a one-on-one battle, the ability to transform isn't particularly useful, as if Chamille's enemy directly sees her alter her appearance, it's not like they're gonna suddenly get tricked and let their guard down. Chamille still does earn a spot over Jacob because she can summon an elemental dragon, which is ridiculously useful in a fight, but beyond that, I do think that all the other masters are a bit better when it comes to direct combat. And a pretty similar thing can be said for Mr. Pale, the Master of Light. Using the power of light, Mr. Pale can turn himself invisible, making him extremely hard to detect for the average fighter, who would have to rely on the slight sounds he makes or his impact on the environment in order to tell his location. This element does have a key weakness though, because Mr. Pale can't turn things that he isn't wearing invisible, meaning that if you can get some dust or any other material on him, he will become visible, which is how Cole took him down originally. I have Mr. Pale over Chamille for the sole reason that fighting an invisible person is probably going to be a lot harder than one that can alter their appearance, but Mr. Pale still struggles from having a fairly exploitable weakness and a lack of offensive capabilities. Next up, we have Tox, the Master of Poison. Tox can shoot poison out of her hands, and anyone who breathes it in gets incapacitated for a short period of time. The major flaw of this ability, though, is just how short the poison lasts, as we see that after Kai breathed her poison in, he was back on his feet and even able to use his fire with seemingly no side effects shortly later. The poison itself is also bright green, making it fairly easy to see and looks super slow as well, considering that Jay easily avoided it and Kai only got hit because he has no idea how to skate. Despite her lackluster element, one thing Tox has in spades is actually physical strength, since she was able to knock away an Anacondrae warrior alongside Karlof in the Corridor of Elders, which is pretty impressive considering that the Anacondrae are the strongest Serpentine tribe. And in the same scene, Mr. Pale is seemingly having a lot more trouble against the Anacondrae he's fighting, implying that Tox is physically superior to him, which just further solidifies her spot. Following Tox is Bolobo, the Master of Nature. Bolobo can manipulate nature, and he wields a natural staff which he can extend vines from to attack his opponent. The first showing we have from Bolobo is when he attacks Jay and does manage to physically restrain him, with Jay only taking the win when he distracts Bolobo with the Fritz Donegan episode before sneak attacking him. Although this was in the context of Bolobo jumping Jay while he was taking a bath, so I don't think it's entirely fair to say that Bolobo is outright stronger than the Blue Ninja, even though his performance was pretty impressive. After this, Bolobo does unfortunately get eliminated in the individual battles because he gets paired up against Neuro, who launched an assault on his mind. But you could hardly blame Bolobo for this, since it's not like there are many elemental masters who can resist a mental attack. After Bolobo, we have Gravis, the Master of Gravity. Gravis's powers let him control the gravity of both himself and the objects around him, allowing him to fly, run on walls, and turn everyday items into projectiles against his opponent. Despite Gravis losing in the first round of the tournament, we get to see his powers used more in detail when Lloyd takes on Chen, where it's shown that the power of gravity can also be used to make his opponent float out of control, completely throwing them off balance. In the Corridor of Elders, Gravis also gets to show what may be the upper limits of his element when he's able to stop the fall of a massive statue head from landing on his allies, showing that his powers still work even on insanely heavy objects. Overall, Gravis's powers work pretty well in terms of both defense and offense, allowing him to fly and run on walls to avoid his enemy's attack, as well as turn anything in the room into a projectile, making him a very well-rounded fighter. Kicking off the top 10 is Shade, the Master of Shadow. The element of Shadow is one of the most annoying powers to deal with in the entire series, with it letting Shade turn invisible under shadows, hide inside of them, and teleport between them. The teleporting aspect of Shade's element is particularly broken, as fighting an opponent who is actively teleporting around you is ridiculously hard. It might seem like Shade has an obvious weakness because he can only use his powers when he's under shadows, but this isn't exactly true because Masters of Shadow can also manipulate their own shadow to use their powers. We see the previous elemental Master of Shadow also hide in their own shadow to travel and catch their opponents off guard, which is something that Chen does as well. Plus, shadows exist in any place where there's both a light source and objects, which includes the large majority of places where a fight would break out anyways. However, even Shade doesn't quite measure up to Ash, the Master of Smoke. Ash can create smoke from his hands, and more importantly, turn himself into smoke to phase through the attacks of enemies. In my opinion, this makes smoke a very broken element, because it means that you can't really beat Ash through pure force unless you catch him by surprise or attack him fast enough to give him no time to turn to smoke. Plus, Ash also showed that he has hand-to-hand combat comparable to Kai, as even when they threw hands without using their powers, it was still a very even battle. Of course, Kai still ended up winning by forcing the Master of Smoke to phase through his attack so that he could grab the Jade Blade, but this fight was actually extremely close, and I think Ash deserves some credit for that. At this point, we've reached the top 8, which is the top half of all the Masters, and ironically, at this spot is the Elemental Master that was eliminated from the tournament first, which is Karlof, the Master of Metal. Karlof has one of the most simple but effective powers, as he can turn his entire body into metal. The reason why Karlof is placed this high is because he outright beat Kai in a fight, and it should be pretty easy to tell that I hold the ninja in super high regard, given that none of them have appeared on this list yet. You might be wondering why Carlos is ranked below Kai if he literally beat him, and this is because I think the result of their fight was more so due to the metal element being a really good counter to fire, rather than Carlos being an overall better combatant. Since Carlos can turn himself into metal, Kai's fire didn't burn him, forcing Kai to get in close if he wanted to deal significant damage, which is pretty bad because Carlos is at his strongest at close range. For some reason, Kai also didn't use Spinjitzu in this encounter, which made him worse off in this fight as well. That being said, Carlos is still super impressive because his ability to turn himself into metal makes him extremely resistant to pretty much every element that works through sheer force. And people with less direct powers like Ash or Shade have an even smaller chance to take Karlof down, because their main way to deal damage is through hand-to-hand combat, which is completely ineffective against him unless you have superhuman strength. Karlof's only major weakness is that his gloves can be unscrewed, but unless you randomly have a screwdriver on hand, like the one Kai somehow managed to get his hands on, then it doesn't really matter. Next up, we've got a character whose powers couldn't be farther apart from Karlof, Neuro, the Master of Mind. Using the element of mind, Neuro can read the mind of his opponents to see what attacks they're about to do and then dodge in advance to avoid it. Plus, Neuro can also launch mental attacks on his opponent to temporarily incapacitate them and create an opening for him to do some serious damage. This ability was a lot less broken originally because Neuro didn't really pack enough of a punch to take advantage of his ability to render his opponent defenseless. But with the introduction of dragons, this all changed because there shouldn't technically be anything stopping Neuro from attacking his enemy's minds and then using his dragon to dish out major damage while his opponent is down. What's more is that Neuro's power likely has the biggest range of all the elemental masters as well, because he could remotely send a message to them to regroup at the Samurai X cave when they were all scattered across Ninjago. This is a particularly big deal because if Neuro can send messages from that distance, he can probably attack the mind from that far as well, making him more effective against enemies who specialize in close combat, as Neuro could stay out of their range while simultaneously sending his own attacks back. Speeding ahead of Neuro is Griffin Turner, the Master of Speed. The element of speed is pretty self-explanatory, as it just lets Turner run ridiculously fast and easily makes him the quickest elemental master. The only way for the average elemental master to hit Turner is to take advantage of the brief periods where he's not actively using his element to get hits in. But while Turner is actively running at top speed, it's pretty much impossible to tag him. The only time we see someone react to Turner using his element is when he fights an Anachondri warrior, as they have heightened reflexes, and outside of these Serpentine, no one else really scales to his speed. Turner does admittedly lack physical strength feats, but to make up for it, he's able to accelerate his own opponent over a large distance and then slam them into the ground at high speeds, which he does in the Thunderblade game to simultaneously stun Jay and Lloyd. To put the cherry on top, due to his element, Turner also possesses the fastest energy dragon as well, with him being capable of pulling ahead of the rest upon Lloyd's request to move faster. As I said earlier, Turner does have brief openings when he's not using his power where he can be hit, but these are incredibly hard to exploit. And when combining this with the fact that his dragon is the fastest, I think it's fair to place him close to the top. After Turner, the very first ninja on the list is Jay, the Master of Lightning. Jay can fire lightning, which deals big damage, and has been shown to temporarily paralyze his opponents due to its electrical current. Even though lightning probably isn't the most broken power I've talked about so far, what sets the ninja apart in general is the many applications of their elements that have been shown up until the tournament. The ninja can temporarily fly with their powers and also use their elements to create force fields, which they did in Rebooted to survive entering the Earth's atmosphere. For Jay, this isn't a one-off instance either, because he also made an elemental shield to block strikes from Nia after she was corrupted by the Overlord in Season 2. Jay, alongside the other ninja, also have the ability to imbue their elements into Spinjitzu. And most of the time when the ninja use Spinjitzu against one of the elemental masters, it's a complete stomp. So it's not just Jay's lightning alone that makes him stronger than the other masters, but also his ability to fly, make shields, and use Spinjitzu, which the non-ninja aren't capable of doing with their elements. Yet, Jay still isn't quite as strong as Cole, the Master of Earth. Cole's element lets him manipulate the Earth for both offense and defense, while also giving him access to super strength. All the extra abilities I explained in Jay's section related to being a ninja also apply to Cole. And the reason why Cole should be stronger than him is because when we see them fight in this show itself, Cole had a clear edge. When Cole and Jay fight in the tournament, Cole directly overpowers him in an elemental clash, and had he kept attacking while Jay was on the ground instead of calling for a truce, he probably would have won. Sure, Jay was the technical winner of the battle, but that's only because Cole went out of his way to throw the Jade Blade after he first got it. This is also supported by the fact that both Jay and Cole are stated to think that Cole would win before the fight took place, so the idea that Cole is stronger is perpetuated in both the narrative and the fight itself. To be clear, I think that the original 4 ninja are all super close in general, since they're pretty much always performing comparably to each other, but based on what we've seen in this season, Cole should have a slight advantage over Jay. Speaking of slight advantages, I went back and forth multiple times over whether or not to place this fighter over Cole, because we've got Kai, the Master of Fire, in third. Kai has the ability to manipulate fire, and also possesses all of the general abilities of the ninja I mentioned earlier. To be blunt, within Season 4 itself, there aren't really any great ways to compare Kai to Cole, or even Jay, so I decided to just go with what has been implied in the past seasons, and those tend to favor Kai a bit more. In Season 2, when the ninja are still helping Lloyd train, he's become capable of beating all of the ninja with the sole exception of Kai, implying that he's the strongest of the original 4. And in Season 3, Kai briefly beat Jay in a spar at Garmadon's dojo, but neither were taking it seriously, so this could be taken with a complete grain of salt. It's been 2 seasons since the statement from Wu, and the spar wasn't even close to the end-all be-all, so if you want to dismiss both of these instances, that's completely fine. In that case, you could rank Cole and maybe even Jay over Kai depending on personal preference. But since we have no other point of comparison for how Kai stacks up to them, I decided to just roll with the interpretation that he's very slightly superior based on previous seasons. The next ninja on this list should be a lot less contentious though, because in second place is Lloyd, the Master of Energy, or Life if you consider the newest seasons. Even after giving the 4 elements to the other ninja, Lloyd is consistently implied to be the strongest ninja with his own power alone. Lloyd is stated to be the greatest competition in the tournament by Skylar, and this is consistent with the fact that during the battle at the Corridor of Elders, Lloyd was mowing down Anachondri better than any of the other elemental masters. To further back this up narratively, I think Lloyd making it farther than anyone else in the tournament is also meant to be a nod at him being the strongest, with Lloyd only being surpassed by Chen wielding all the other elements at once. I don't think I really have to justify why the green ninja of all people is super strong, and I bet if anything, a lot of you are wondering why he isn't at first. Well, that's because of Skylar, the Master of Amber. Skylar's element lets her copy the powers of everyone she touches, and partway through the series, she had copied everyone's element, including Lloyd's, making her the de facto strongest. The only caveat to this is that Skylar doesn't have a dragon, but in my opinion, possessing literally every element in the tournament more than makes up for it. To further back this up, Garmadon says that if Chen gets enough elements, he'll be too strong for the ninja combined to overcome, which should include Lloyd and his elemental dragon. You could argue that Lloyd hadn't summoned his elemental dragon without golden power yet when this statement was made, but I think Garmadon should know about his ability to create a dragon at this point regardless. This is because in the episode where Lloyd does create one, during the parachute scene, Garmadon and Lloyd were speaking like they already knew it was something he could do before he actually summoned it, as long as he got over his fear, likely implying that this power was discovered in between Season 3 and 4. So I think it's super consistent for Chen with all the elements, and Skylar by extension, to be stronger than Lloyd by the time of Season 4. To be clear, I would say that Skylar is weaker than Lloyd in later seasons since the elements she copies wear off eventually, but the specific version of her in the Tournament of Elements does pretty objectively surpass Lloyd at that point in the series.